You are listening to STR, the Sunday Times Radio. Culture, music, and beyond.
Hello guys! You are listening to the podcast series Community Working Out. In this episode, we explore why cycling has become more than a sport in the UAE and why it is quietly turning into a lifeline for physical health, mental resilience, and human connection. From sunrise group rides to virtual training communities that survive the summer heat, we look at how cycling creates structure, purpose, and belonging in a region built on speed. We talk about accessibility, safety, performance pressure, and why two wheels often succeed where motivation apps and therapy sessions fail. About riding alone versus riding together, and why community is a difference. And I'm your host, Sophia Brandwein, the founder of the Sane Times. I didn't start cycling because I wanted to be fast. I started because I needed something that belonged only to me. When I moved to Dubai, everything felt intense in a very specific way. Work was fast, ambitions were loud, people were busy, impressive, ambitious, and somehow still lonely. I was looking for a routine, a structure, a way to anchor myself in a city that constantly pushes you forward without ever really telling you where forward is. Cycling came into my life quietly. Early mornings, empty roads, the strange comfort of repetition. At first, it felt solitary, almost meditative. You pedal, you breathe, you listen to your thoughts until they calm down or completely exhaust themselves. And for a while, that was enough. But then something unexpected happened. I started noticing other cyclists. A nod on the road, a shared sunrise, brief conversation at a coffee stop that somehow felt more honest than most small talks at dinners or events. Slowly, cycling stopped being just movement and started becoming language. What fascinates me about cycling communities, especially here in the UAE, is that they attract people who don't necessarily need another social obligation. They need relief, structure, purpose, a space where effort makes sense, where suffering is voluntary, shared, and oddly therapeutic. Cycling is demanding, yes, it's uncomfortable, it can be brutal, but it's also strangely fair. You don't need to explain yourself, you don't need to perform confidence, you just show up, clip in, and ride. And somehow, in that shared effort, connection happens naturally. In this episode of Community Working Out, we are talking about cycling, not just as a sport, but as a culture. Why it's growing so fast in the UAE. Why it attracts both beginners and high performers. Why bike shops have turned into social hubs. Why virtual cycling matters as much as outdoor riding. And why, for so many people, two wheels have become a way to survive pressure-heavy lives without falling apart. This episode is about community, but also about consistency. About discipline without aggression, about finding freedom inside structure, about how cycling builds bodies but also stabilizes minds. And most importantly, it's about why once cycling becomes part of your life, it rarely stays just a workout. It becomes a way of being. Chapter 1. Why cycling works when everything else fails. There are moments when nothing works the way it's supposed to. You sleep enough, but you're still tired. You work out, but your head stays loud. You socialize, but you feel oddly detached from yourself. Modern life offers plenty of solutions for stress and imbalance. Gyms, classes, apps, productivity hacks, yet many of them add another layer of pressure. Perform better, be stronger, optimize harder, improve faster. Cycling feels different. Not because it's easier, or well, it isn't, but because it asks for something very specific: presence. When you ride, especially for long periods, there is no multitasking. No scrolling, no pretending, the rhythm takes over. Pedal stroke after pedal stroke, breath syncing with effort, body negotiating with resistance, mind slowly quieting, not because you forced it to, but because there is no room left for noise. This is why so many people describe cycling not as exercise, but as regulation. There is speed, but also control. There is suffering, but it is structured. There is feedback, immediate and honest. Push harder, feel it. ease off, recover. Unlike the gym, where effort is often abstract or aesthetic, cycling gives clarity. You move through space, you see distance, you feel wind, heat, resistance. The body understands what it's doing, and the brain responds. Neuroscientifically, endurance movement, combined with rhythm and forward motion, is one of the most reliable ways to enter a flow state. A state where the prefrontal cortex quiets down, rumination decreases, and perception narrows to what matters right now. Psychologically, that's relief. Identity-wise, it's grounding. You are no longer performing wellness. You are inhabiting effort. Melissa Moncada, president of the UAE team EDIQ, speaks about this not from theory, but from lived experience, as someone who has seen cycling transform people far beyond performance metrics.
Something that is just surreal for me, and I know for most of the cyclists, is that cycling is purely meditation in motion, right? It's such a sport that allows you to connect to that flow state when you are totally in movement, you're totally in freedom, and it helps you to shape your mind to a mindset of possibility. For women, it just opens a space where confidence is built through all the effort that you do in the bicycle, right? How you are able to show your capabilities. Either you are with a group, so you have all the sense of belonging through the community, or when you are alone, because you are evolving your purpose through all the progression and to all the advancements that you do. Every time that you go to the bicycle, even though it's very challenging, it's very rewarding because you are able to advance and to advance and to advance. And when a woman is in a bicycle, she can see what she's capable of. What is her strength? What is her resilience? And also, as I was mentioning before, cycling is a team sport, right? And it's beautiful, all the sisterhoods that can create, because in the projects that we have as women moving forward, that we shaped all the opportunities in the country, in Dubai and in Abu Dhabi. We ride almost every day, and we allow women to come, even if they are alone, to join a community that is full of women that thinks as they are, that has the same challenges, that have the same passion or the same aspiration as is being in a bicycle. So we can see how we live each other and we celebrate each other's new discoveries, new faces, and new levels that they are unlocking. So for me, in these 4 years that we're having the project, for me it's amazing because I have seen countless stories where the ladies that they came and they weren't very new to cycling, they were even zero before, they have shaped their personality and they really utilized this tool because I use it also for myself, right? Cycling has been a catalyst for my transformation in so many senses, even to the spiritual level, because I believe sport in general, but cycling because it just allows you to go to this flow state so easily that you connect with the bicycle. And I believe the speed that cycling allows us to have, that you don't have it in any other sport, right? I mean, you can have it in Formula One, but you don't have it in basketball, you don't have it in tennis, you don't have it in running. This speed allows us to feel so connected with ourselves that it just allows this cohesion with the community and with us. And for me, this platform is as equal as important as UAE Team EDQ is, because it really inspires all the citizens in the UAE, and every year we see more and more and more and more women riding bicycle. And it's beautiful because it's just across cultures, right? We are in the most diverse country in the world with more than 200 nationalities, and seeing all this group of beautiful women across the world believing in their own power is beautiful.
What Melissa describes here is not motivation, it's identity recalibration. Cycling doesn't ask you who you are professionally, socially, emotionally. It asks one simple question: can you keep going? And every time you do, even imperfectly, the answer reshapes how you see yourself. This is why cycling often succeeds where other forms of fitness fail. It's not about intensity for intensity's sake. It's about coherence. Body and mind doing the same thing at the same time. Effort that makes sense. progress you can feel. And once that connection is established, it becomes addictive in the healthiest way. Not because it distracts you from life, but because it brings you back into it, clearer, calmer, more honest. This is the foundation everything else in cycling builds on. Before community, before structure, before performance. First, the ride teaches you how to be present again. Chapter 2. From fear to belonging. How communities lower the barrier. Most people don't avoid cycling because they are lazy, unfit, or uninterested. They avoid it because cycling, from the outside, looks hostile. Fast, loud, technical, full of rules no one bothered to explain. Tight jerseys, expensive bikes, silent judgment disguised as pace. Cycling has an image problem. Not because the sport is exclusive by nature, but because entry points are often poorly designed. When the first interaction with the sport feels like a test instead of an invitation, most people quietly opt out. And fear doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like postponing. I will start when I'm fitter. I'll buy a bike later. I don't know where to go. What people are really saying is, I don't know if I will be welcome. This is why community structure matters more than fitness. Before performance, before equipment, before discipline, people need to feel safe. Physically, yes, but more importantly, socially. Dan James, general manager at Bikera, has watched this shift unfold from the ground up as cycling in the UAE transformed from a niche pursuit into a daily ritual for thousands of people. He describes how access, infrastructure, and community design quietly changed who felt allowed to participate.
You know, when you look at the UAE today, it's wild how quickly cycling's grown. I remember getting here 14 years ago and the scene was fairly small compared to what it is today. But now you go to Meydan or Al Qudra or Mushrif Bike Park on any given morning, and it really feels like half the country's out on two wheels. And I think that shift really started when people began looking for healthier, more social ways to spend their time, especially young professionals who want to stay active, build connections, and honestly just disconnect from day-to-day life. And also people later in their careers who simply want something fulfilling before or after a busy day. But the real catalyst is the fact that the UAE has made it incredibly easy to cycle. You know, the government has really invested in creating this cycling infrastructure, and suddenly people realized, hang on, this sport is actually really accessible. So from Bikera's perspective, and even with Jamira John's cycling club, we've watched people who've never even touched a bike suddenly become regulars on our rides, and they're forming friendships, setting goals, chasing PBs. It's really become a part of the culture, and honestly, I think the UAE is only just getting started. I always say this, people aren't scared of cycling, they're scared of cyclists. You know, the gear, the speed, the group rides, it all looks really intense from the outside. But at Bikera, what we've done is we've put a lot of work into making that first step as easy as possible for people. We've built a full ecosystem of community rides for every level, from absolute beginners all the way up to experienced riders. And these rides run across different locations throughout the week. So there's always something that fits your schedule. One of the most popular rides, for example, is the Thursday social ride at Kite Beach, which we run in partnership with Jamira John Cycling Club. And we split it into 3 groups. So we have the beginners group, which is perfect if you've never ridden before. You learn the do's, the don'ts, and the basic etiquette in a really supportive environment. Then we have the intermediate group where people start building confidence and technique. And then we have the advanced group, which is for riders who want a bit more pace and a bit more excitement. You know, it is short, it's fun, it's social, and people love it because there's no pressure. And then outside of that, we've got mountain biking groups in Mushrif, we've got road rides at Meydan, we've got road rides at Al Qudra. There's plenty more scatters across the city for everyone. So whatever your level, there's a ride where you'll feel at home. And honestly, we tell beginners the same thing every time. Rent a bike, show up at the community ride and just enjoy it, because the community will take care of the rest for you.
What Dan describes here isn't growth through marketing, it's growth through design. Lower the entry barrier and people show up. Create predictable structures and fear dissolves. Replace judgment with guidance and consistency follows naturally. This is a part of cycling culture that rarely makes it into highlight reels. But it is the foundation everything else stands on. Because once people feel safe, they don't need convincing, they don't need motivation speeches, they just need a place to return to. And when belonging comes first, performance stops being intimidating, it becomes optional. That's when cycling stops being something you try once and starts becoming something you build a life around. Chapter 3. Riding together. Safety, skill and shared responsibility. There is a very specific moment on a group ride when everything suddenly clicks. The pace is steady, the wind noise softens, wheels are close but not stressful, no one surges unnecessarily, no one panics. You are not thinking about watts or speed anymore, you are thinking about the person in front of you, the rider next to you, the rhythm of the group. That's when cycling stops feeling like exercise and starts feeling like choreography. But anyone who has ever been on a bad group ride knows the opposite feeling just as well. The unpredictability, sudden braking, riders overlapping wheels, no signals, no communication, ego-led surges that turn social ride into quiet survival mode. Group riding is either magic or chaos. And the difference is not fitness, it's structure. This is where cycling becomes a social system rather than a collection of individuals on bikes. When it works, everyone carries responsibility not just for themselves, but for the group. When it doesn't, even strong riders feel unsafe. Dan James, general manager at Bikira, spends most of his professional life inside this tension, between freedom and structure, flow and control. He explains why good group riding has nothing to do with being fast and everything to do with being predictable.
Group rides are honestly one of the best parts of cycling in the UAE, and when they work well, there's this flow, this rhythm where everyone's riding together, sharing the effort, and the whole thing just feels quite electric, but that only happens when the group understands the basics. One of the biggest misunderstandings is that riding fast at the back of a bunch means you're ready to lead from the front, but it doesn't. Sitting at the back, you're protected from the wind. And when you do come through that group and you make your way to the front and it's your turn to do an effort, that effort can jump massively. And if you can't hold the pace, then the whole group behind you compresses, and that's when things can get quite messy.
This is one of the most important lessons new riders learn too late. Speed without awareness is destabilizing. Dan continues by naming the real foundation of group safety: communication.
So the heart of group riding, I would say, is actually really simple. It's smooth pacing and constant communication. And when I talk about communication, this is quite a big point for us. You need to call out when you're slowing, when you're overtaking, call out hazards on the track, call out turns at junctions or riders passing at the side. Silence and group riding don't really mix so well, and talking keeps everyone safe.
Communication here is not noise, it's care. Calling out a pothole isn't about showing experience, it's about protecting the rider behind you. Signaling a slowdown isn't weakness, it's responsibility. In good groups, talking is not optional, it's the glue. Equipment plays its role too, not as aesthetics, but as visibility and predictability.
And then you've got the equipment. The helmet is an obvious one, and you can't join any of our group rides without a helmet, but also lights front and rear are just as important, especially for the early mornings or the late evenings. Being seen as a safety rule and not a suggestion.
Safety, in this sense, is collective. One rider without lights isn't just taking a personal risk, they're increasing risk for everyone. Dan also explains why leadership matters before the ride even starts.
And also before any ride, a good leader will do a quick briefing so everyone knows the route, the structure, the pace expectations, what to do in different situations. And something we focus on a lot for our own group rides is splitting into smaller groups based on ability. Not one big group of 30 plus riders hurling down the track, that's dangerous. So we focus on smaller ability match groups to keep the ride organized and predictable and also enjoyable for everyone.
Structure doesn't kill joy, it creates it. When riders know what to expect, they relax. When they relax, they ride better. When they ride better, the group finds flow. Dan sums it up simply and perfectly.
And at the end of the day, group riding is teamwork, where everyone communicates, respects the pace and looks out for each other. The experience becomes not just safer, but genuinely more fun. When we talk about the future of cycling in the UAE, the exciting part is that we're not starting from zero. We're already playing on a world stage. The country's got UAE Team Emirates. That is a team that features some of the biggest names in global cycling. And when you have a powerhouse like that representing your nation, it does inspire people. It raises the ceiling of what's possible and brings out a huge amount of visibility and credibility to the sport here. And because of that momentum, I think the growth is only speeding up. In the next few years, we're going to see even more dedicated cycling infrastructure, more connected lanes and safer networks across the UAE. The amateur racing scene is also going to expand. I think we're already seeing a big amount of enthusiasm around events like the Spinese Cycle Challenge, and that demand is only increasing. I think you'll also start to see a lot more e-bikes and mobility options taking off. Not just for fitness, but for commuting and everyday lifestyle. Cycling becomes a part of how people move and not just how they train. On the community side, I think we'll see a lot more structure, more leadership from the UAE government, more organised groups. Clubs like Jamira Johns are showing how inclusive, supportive and high quality a cycling community can be, and that model will only spread. And bike shops will evolve too. At Bikey we're already pushing that change. And we're not the only ones doing it, but what we're seeing is becoming less about retail and more about offering a full ecosystem, educating riders, ride support, events, coaching, hospitality, that kind of thing. Everything a rider needs throughout their entire journey. So when I think about the next 3 to 5 years, I do genuinely believe that the UAE is on track to become one of the most influential cycling cultures in the world, and the foundations are in place and the ambition is huge and the community is growing faster than ever.
That's a quiet truth of cycling communities. The magic isn't in going fast, it's in moving together. And when group rides are built around shared responsibility rather than ego, something powerful happens. Intimidation dissolves. Confidence grows. Riders stop worrying about whether they belong and start learning how to contribute. That's when cycling stops being scary. That's when it becomes a place. Chapter 4. When the weather tries to break you. There is a specific kind of lie endurance athletes tell themselves in the UAE. That heat is a mindset problem. That if you want it badly enough, if you are disciplined enough, you will just push through summer the same way you do through fatigue or boredom. But heat isn't psychological resistance, it's physics. It changes heart rate, perceived effort, hydration needs, recovery time, and risk. Pretending otherwise doesn't make you tougher, it just makes you inconsistent. And consistency is the only thing endurance sport actually rewards. Every summer in the UAE looks the same. Routines fracture, alarm clocks go quiet, group chats slow down, riders disappear for just a few weeks, then quietly turn into months. Not because motivation vanished, but because the environment became hostile to habit. This is where most progress is lost. Not during hard blocks, but during gaps. What breaks athletes isn't intensity, it's interruption. This is where adaptation matters more than willpower. Indoor and virtual cycling aren't replacements for outdoor riding. They are continuity tools. Psychological bridges that keep the nervous system familiar with effort, structure, and rhythm when conditions outside are no longer negotiable. They keep the identity intact. I am still a cyclist even when the environment says otherwise. Numbers, in this context, stop being vanity metrics. They become anchors, something stable when everything else feels chaotic. Not to obsess over, but to return to. Bart, relationship manager at My Whoosh Abu Dhabi, explains this shift not from a technology perspective, but from observing how athletes actually behave when conditions get difficult.
The gap that virtual cycling fills in the UAE is clearly escaping the heat in summer and have full training options during these tough, hot summer months. Although the UAE offers a lot of safe cycling facilities, indoor cycling is also the most safe option. No worries about traffic lights, riding in groups where some inexperienced riders might cause crashes. And finally, for those who are fixed on numbers, with indoor cycling you can be fully focused on your numbers like the watts or your heart rate, so you can get full specific training without having to worry about any external factors.
What Bart describes isn't comfort, it's control.
Same like in outdoor, communities can be fun and engaging. It's easy to communicate and encouraging. Again, the weather factor is not there. When the weather is bad, some riders might skip the ride or don't feel like going out. But in the virtual world, there's not that excuse. So that's why the community can be really more supportive.
Consistency doesn't come from motivation. It comes from removing friction. Bart points to something many athletes underestimate: the role of privacy in persistence.
This might be because it's more private. Your avatar is on the screen, but the real you is not visible. Same as on other social platforms, you can also ride under a pseudonym. We have a page called My Whoosh Info, where some of this data can be looked at. Very similar actually to Strava, where this data shows your progress. Some of this we also need to validate when participating in races.
Privacy lowers performance anxiety. It allows people to show up imperfectly without social cost, which is exactly how habits survive pressure. Here, numbers stop being about comparison. They become evidence of continuity.
Virtual training helps in being consistent during harsh weather months, so it's easier to get back into it when going outdoors again. And also specific trainings based on power, for example, can be better done indoors, and that again will reflect on the outdoor performance.
This is the missing link many athletes ignore. Indoor training doesn't replace outdoor riding. It preserves the system that allows you to return to it without starting from zero. When someone tries to break routines, the athletes who survive aren't the toughest. They are the most adaptive. They accept that environment shapes behavior, and they build structures that work with reality, not against it. Consistency is not romantic, but it is undefeated. And in places where the weather actively resists you, discipline doesn't look heroic, it looks flexible. Cycling doesn't fix your life, and that's probably why it works. It doesn't solve your problems, it doesn't answer big questions, it doesn't magically make you happier or calmer or more successful. What it does is much quieter and in many ways much more important. It stabilizes you. In a city that constantly pulls your attention in every direction, cycling gives you something rare: rhythm. Pedal, breathe, repeat. Forward motion with clear feedback. Effort that makes sense. Progress you can feel in your body, not just measure on a screen. You suffer, but not in chaos. You suffer with structure. And structure is what most of us are missing when everything else feels overwhelming. Cycling sits in this strange, perfect space between solitude and belonging. You can ride along with your thoughts, disappear into a flow state, let the noise fade out, and you can ride together, sharing effort, sharing silence, sharing those looks at the top of a climb that say, yes, that was hard, and yes, we did it. Community doesn't make you bigger, it makes you show up. It lowers the barrier on days when motivation is gone. It keeps you accountable without judgment. It reminds you that consistency is not about discipline alone. It's about not having to carry everything by yourself. Two wheels create order where chaos dominates. They turn movement into ritual. They turn effort into identity. You are not just someone trying to stay active. You're a cyclist. Someone who moves forward, literally and mentally, even when conditions aren't perfect. And maybe that's the real reason cycling works. Not because it's easy or trendy or aesthetic, but because it teaches you how to keep moving in a world that consistently tries to stop you. And this is community working out. In the next episode, we slow things down and make them much more exposed. We are talking about running. Running strips everything back. No gears, no hiding, no coasting. Just you, your breath, and the ground beneath your feet. Where cycling can feel like flow, running feels like confrontation. Where cycling gives distance, running demands presence. And in the next episode, we will explore running and mental health, loneliness versus presence, simplicity versus performance, and why sometimes the hardest way forward is also the most honest one. And I'm your host, Sophia Brauntwein, the founder of the Sane Times.